White CEO smirked. Translate this, and I'll give you my salary. Black waitress did it in seconds. Subscribe to the channel for more stories and comment where you're from. A chortle escaped the millionaire CEO, Nathan Cole. If you can translate this, my salary for the month is yours. His voice was laced with a patronizing amusement as he brandished a thick contract written in Chinese beneath the soft, golden light of the penthouse boardroom at Cole Industries. Glasses clinked together as the assembled executives, clutching champagne flutes, let out a wave of laughter. The sheer absurdity of a self-made tech magnate daring a temporary waitress to decode a complex legal document resonated through the opulent room. Zara Thomas, a black woman with her dark hair styled in elegant braids and her posture impeccably straight, was carrying a tray of appetizers toward the other side of the room. She halted as the papers rustled in Nathan's grasp, her deep brown eyes locking with his for a fleeting second. The room fell quiet. "Was that intended to be a joke?" she inquired, her voice soft yet firm enough to travel across the gleaming stone floor. Nathan arched an eyebrow, a flicker of amusement in his gaze. "Only if you find it funny, miss," he started, his tone dripping with a theatrical condescension that wavered when he noticed the unwavering resolve in her eyes. "Thomas," she supplied. Zara Thomas. She placed her tray on a nearby table, her hands perfectly steady, her voice devoid of the nervous quiver he'd anticipated. Nathan let out a rich, mocking laugh. "Zara Thomas," he echoed, raising a finger in a dramatic challenge. "Translate this document within 24 hours, and I will personally deliver my entire monthly salary to you. $500,000. Now that would be quite the feat." Another ripple of laughter spread through the executives. Champagne glasses sparkled in the dim lighting. Some men hooped while others shot each other knowing looks. Nathan's stance exuded an air of absolute superiority, the very image of a man accustomed to winning, as he awaited her response. Zara took a slow breath, squared her shoulders, and strode forward without a flicker of hesitation. She extended a hand, her fingers grazing the edge of the document. "I'll give it a try," she stated plainly. Nathan blinked. "I beg your pardon." The room silenced once more. The smirks on the executives' faces began to fade. "I said," Zara reiterated, "I will try. I accept your challenge." For a beat, only silence hung in the air. Then, someone let out an uncertain chuckle. Nathan managed a smile, his confidence cracking for a split second as he looked into her eyes. They were not the eyes of someone who simply served canapes. They held wisdom, sorrow, and something more profound that he could not place. "Very well," he said, affecting amusement as he handed the contract over. "Best of luck. You're going to need it." Zara nodded, accepting the folder with both hands. As she turned to depart, her fingers trembled, but not from fear. It was something deeper, a memory, an indignity, a trial. Nathan watched her leave, her form silhouetted against the glittering city skyline. The laughter resumed behind him, but he stood still, his smile now noticeably thinner. Something about her gaze had shaken him. It was probably nothing, or perhaps it was the start of everything. Zara Thomas entered the muted quiet of her apartment, the door clicking shut behind her with a sound that felt too definite. The building was old, the sort where pipes rattled inside the walls and the sound of neighbors' televisions bled through the thin plaster. In the faint glow filtering through a grimy window, her shadow stretched across a floor crowded with mismatched furniture, bookshelves bowed with the weight of secondhand paperbacks, and a small, worn desk in the corner. She didn't switch on the overhead lamp. The warm light from her desk lamp was sufficient. She carefully hung her waitress uniform on the back of a chair, then began to undo her braids, letting her dark, coiled hair frame her face. After a moment of stillness, she retrieved the contract from her bag and laid it out on the desk. Her fingers moved with practiced efficiency as she powered on her old, slow laptop. Methodically, she photographed each page, aligning them with precision, her breathing measured and even. Once finished, she composed an email to a familiar address, that of Professor Lin Takahashi, a former mentor, and one of the last people who knew her true story. The subject line was simple: need a second opinion. Urgent. She paused before clicking send, then committed. The exhaustion of the day finally settled upon her. Zara leaned back in her chair, closing her eyes for a moment. But her mind refused to rest, journeying back to a different time, a different existence. Lagos. Her childhood home had smelled of old paper and printing ink. Her mother, a university literature professor, had filled their lives with books, poetry, and rigorous study. Zara had always been the quiet one, the bookworm, the daughter who would gently correct her father's Mandarin pronunciation at the dinner table. She recalled the night she fled Nigeria. The air at the bus station was thick with a hushed panic. Her mother had embraced her, one hand cradling the back of her head, as if to shield her from the world by sheer will. Her voice was low and trembling, yet firm, when she spoke in her native Yoruba. "Never let them steal your mind from you," she had whispered. "They can take everything else, but your mind is yours. Do not forget who you are." Zara's eyes opened, the memory a heavy weight in her chest. She glanced at the small, framed photo beside her laptop. Her mother, her hair pulled back, her eyes both kind and resolute. It was the only photograph she felt safe enough to display. Turning her focus back to the computer screen, she began to translate. Her eyes moved from line to line, her fingers flying across the keyboard. She was out of practice, but the language came back to her like a long-lost friend, intricate, demanding, yet familiar. As the hours bled past midnight, she shifted into analytical mode. A second document filled with notes, syntactical breakdowns, contextual explanations, and finally, a series of red flags. Then she found it. Hidden deep within the contract's third annex was a clause, written in obfuscating legalese and technical jargon, that would have eluded even a seasoned English-speaking attorney. It granted nearly complete and persistent back-end access to user data, system architecture, and encryption keys. It wasn't just a business liability. It was a catastrophic vulnerability that could bring down the entire company and expose millions of users. She sat frozen, her heart pounding. If this had been signed without notice, Cole Industries systems would have been defenseless against exploitation. And Nathan Cole, arrogant, powerful, and smug, had waved this document around like a party trick. Zara rose and walked to the small window over her kitchen sink. She pushed it open, letting the cool night air wash over her face, lifting loose strands of her hair. The city glowed below, a vast and oblivious expanse. She was just one shadow among millions, invisible but not powerless. She looked down at her hands, the same hands that had scrubbed counters and cleared tables, the same hands that had once held a doctoral thesis and a passport she could no longer claim. They were trembling again, but this time with a sharper emotion. Not anger, not even pride. It was purpose. This was never about the money. "This isn't a joke," she murmured to herself, her voice barely a whisper. "This is my chance." My only 1-inch. Her eyes returned to the contract, the lines of Chinese text now seared into her memory. She would complete the translation. She would add her annotations. She would show him, not because she wanted a salary, but because she had to remind herself and the world that she had not vanished, that she still existed, that her mind was her own, and that her name, though unspoken in these halls of power, still meant something. She sat back down, pulled her hair back into a loose bun, and began to type again. The night was a long way from over. The morning light streamed through the towering glass windows of the Cole Industries boardroom, casting long shadows across the polished conference table. The room, filled with senior executives sipping coffee and murmuring about the prior evening's festivities, hummed with its typical air of corporate assurance. The aroma of fresh espresso mingled with the crisp scent of success. Nathan Cole, seated at the head of the table, was wearing a tailored gray suit and an expression still tinged with the smugness of his recent victory. He was mid-sentence, casually outlining the company's next moves after the acquisition, when the boardroom doors swung open. Zara Thomas stepped inside, unannounced. She wore the same black skirt and blouse from the night before, but today she held no tray. Her dark hair was neatly styled, and she carried a simple manila folder. No one spoke as she traversed the length of the room. A few people recognized her. Most just stared, baffled by the quiet resolve in her stride. She placed the folder on the table directly in front of Nathan. "This is the complete translation of the document you gave me," she said, her voice steady, "along with my notes regarding its implications." The silence in the room was immediate and total. Nathan glanced at the folder, then slowly raised his eyes to meet hers. For a moment, he seemed unsure how to react. A few executives shifted uncomfortably. One of them, the company's CFO Diane Winters, leaned in and opened the folder. Her brow furrowed as she read the first page. "Wait a minute, this is perfect," Diane murmured. "Who did this translation?" "I did," Zara replied, her posture tall, her tone neither boastful nor defensive. It was simply a statement of fact. A low murmur rippled around the table. Nathan's fingers tapped once on the arm of his chair. He stood, took the document, and began to scan it. The annotations were precise, the analysis was exact, and near the end, highlighted in red, were two critical sections he'd completely overlooked. A creeping stillness fell over the room again as he read. The contract held a clause, subtle, deeply embedded, but with devastating potential. It would have granted their overseas partner access to a significant portion of coal industry's data infrastructure under the pretense of providing technical support. Zara had not only translated the words, but had laid out the consequences in clear, undeniable terms. Nathan remained silent. Diane turned to him, her voice low. "If this had been signed, our entire system could have been compromised. Zara just saved us." He looked back up at Zara, but this time, something new was in his eyes. Not irritation, not superiority, but something quieter, more pensive. "I appreciate this," he said, his voice slow and hesitant. Zara gave a single nod. "You should have your contracts reviewed more carefully in the future," she advised. Then, as calmly as she had entered, she turned and exited the room, the door clicking softly shut behind her. For several long seconds, the room stayed frozen. Nathan stared at the door, trying to process what had just occurred. The woman he had publicly mocked less than 12 hours ago had not only risen to his challenge, but had also uncovered a threat that no one else in his company had seen. She had done it with speed, accuracy, and without demanding a single thing in return. Something shifted within him then, not a dramatic, instantaneous change, but a definite one. The hard lines of confidence on his face seemed to soften. For the first time in a very long time, Nathan Cole felt the distinct weight of being wrong. Outside, in the hallway, Zara walked on without breaking her stride. She knew she had shocked them, but more importantly, she had done something for herself. Something no one in that building could have given her. Recognition, quiet but real. The door to Nathan Cole's office clicked shut, muffling the low hum of the coal industry's headquarters. The space, vast and impeccably styled, was a monument to success. Floor-to-ceiling windows, curated modern art, a sleek desk, and shelves filled with awards and strategic reports. But this morning, none of it provided Nathan with its usual sense of pride. He sat at his desk, the document Zara had delivered now lying open before him. He had gone over it again, alone, and the conclusion was inescapable. She hadn't just proven him wrong. She had revealed a critical weakness in his entire operation, and she had done so with quiet precision, asking for nothing. When a soft knock came at the door, he straightened. "Come in," he called out. Zara entered, her expression composed, her posture relaxed yet alert. Nathan gestured to the chair opposite his desk. "Please, have a seat," he said, his voice softer than usual. She did. A moment of silence passed. He cleared his throat, not quite sure where to start. "I wanted to thank you," he began, "and to understand. You are not who I thought you were." Zara looked at him evenly. "No," she agreed. "I'm not." Nathan paused, then leaned forward. "May I ask who you are?" She took a breath before answering, her words direct and unadorned. "My name is Zara Thomas." I was born in Lagos. I did my postgraduate studies at Stanford, where I received a doctorate in East Asian linguistics. I had to leave my academic career after my father, a journalist, was targeted during a period of political upheaval. My family became a mark. I had to become invisible, not for my own safety, but for theirs. He didn't speak at first. Then, in a tone far gentler than she had ever heard from him, Nathan asked, "Why work a job like this?" "Because it allowed me to disappear," she said, "and that kept them safe." He stared at her, struggling to reconcile the woman before him with the dismissive role he had cast her in just hours earlier. A silence stretched between them, not awkward, but filled with unspoken realities. Nathan reached into a drawer and pulled out a checkbook. With a few quick movements of his pen, he signed a check and slid it across the desk. $500,000, he said. "As we agreed." Zara looked down at the check, then back at him. "I don't want your money," she stated. He blinked. "It's yours. You earned it." "I didn't do this for a prize," she replied. "I did it to protect something of value, the same way I've been protecting my family for years. And unlike you, I don't need a grand gesture to be reminded of my own worth." Her words weren't unkind. They were simply the truth. Nathan leaned back in his chair, quiet once more. A long silence followed as he watched her, trying and failing to find the right response. Finally, as she stood up to go, his voice stopped her. "Wait." Zara paused. Nathan turned his chair to face a tall mirror in the corner of his office. For a moment, he just looked at his own reflection. The sharp suit, the meticulously styled hair, the CEO everyone looked up to. But he no longer saw strength. He saw a void. "I look at myself in this mirror every single day," he said, his voice low. "But today, for the first time, I'm asking myself a question." She waited without speaking. He turned back to her. "What kind of man have I allowed myself to become?" Zara offered no reply. She didn't have to. She simply left, leaving the check untouched on his desk. Nathan sat alone in the ensuing silence, the question echoing in his chest like a tolling bell. Zara's new office was situated in the quieter east wing of Cole Industries, a modest but sun-filled space with a view of the city and a wall already filling up with neatly arranged books. Only a week had passed since the boardroom incident, but in that time, Zara had been discreetly offered a temporary consulting role by the legal department, an offer made at Nathan's insistence. She hadn't accepted right away. She had asked for clarification, set conditions, and made it clear she would need to maintain control over her schedule and her privacy. Nathan had approved every request without question. That morning, Zara was at her desk, typing notes for a cross-border compliance document, when a light knock sounded on her open door. Nathan appeared. He was by himself, without his usual entourage of assistants or junior executives trailing him. Tucked under his arm was an object wrapped in brown paper. There was no fanfare, no pretense, just him. "Good morning," he said. Zara glanced up from her work, her expression as composed as ever. "Good morning." "I'll only be a moment," Nathan said. "I wanted to bring you something." She raised an eyebrow, but remained silent as he came forward and carefully set the package on her desk. She could tell by the careful wrapping that this hadn't come from a standard shop. It had been handled with care. Nathan peeled away the paper to reveal a worn but beautifully kept book. The cover was embossed with Spanish text, the title clearly academic. Her breath hitched as she reached out for it. "It's a rare first edition," he said softly. "Published in Caracas, 1987. Linguistic Theories on Indigenous Andean Dialects. I had a friend in Madrid find it for me. I thought you might find it interesting." Zara held the book with reverence, her fingertips brushing the weathered spine. It had been so long since she had held something from that part of her past that wasn't just a painful memory. A comfortable silence settled in the room. "Thank you," she said finally, her voice quieter than he was used to. "This is more meaningful than I can say." Nathan gave a small nod, but his gaze lingered on her for a moment more. "You deserve to be seen, Zara, not just for what you did for us last week, but for who you are every day." She didn't reply, but she met his gaze. The moment passed, and Nathan turned to go. As he neared the doorway, two young associates walked past in the hall. One of them glanced in and, unaware of Zara's new role, said with casual dismissal, "Hey, isn't that the waitress from the party?" Nathan stopped. His voice, calm but unmistakably firm, cut through the air before Zara could react. "Her name is Dr. Thomas," he corrected without looking back at them. "She's a senior member of our international strategy team." The associates froze, mumbled awkward apologies, and hurried away. Nathan continued down the hall without a backward glance. Inside the office, Zara sat perfectly still. The moment was small, a correction, a name, but its impact was profound. She ran her fingers over the cover of the book again in a slow, deliberate motion. A smile formed on her lips, not a polite or reflexive one, but a genuine, unguarded smile. The first one Nathan Cole had ever seen from her, though he hadn't even been there to witness it. 3 months went by, and with each one, the space between Zara and Nathan diminished, not through dramatic confessions or grand displays, but in quiet moments, late-night emails filled with mutual respect, and careful conversations held between meetings and deadlines. Their most recent project had taken them to Sao Paulo. Cole Industries was pursuing a partnership with a Brazilian tech firm, and Nathan had personally asked for Zara to help navigate the linguistic subtleties and cultural dynamics. She had accepted on the condition that she would be an equal partner in the negotiations, not a background translator. Nathan had agreed without a moment's hesitation. Now, seated across from one another in a sleek conference room high above the city, they operated as a seamless unit. Zara clarified technical terms, explained cultural assumptions, and provided insights that saved both parties from misunderstandings. Nathan listened intently, making adjustments based on her counsel, but never overriding her. Their professional rhythm was flawless. After the day's meeting, as the sun began to set, painting the room in hues of orange and pink, they walked through a bustling local market at Zara's suggestion. She navigated the vibrant stalls with ease, switching between Portuguese and Spanish effortlessly. Nathan followed, watching her haggle for a small bag of handmade candies and share a laugh with a vendor who mistook them for a married couple. "I grew up around markets like this," she explained as they strolled. "The sounds, the colors, it feels alive in a way a boardroom never can." Nathan smiled. "You seem different here." Zara glanced at him, an eyebrow arched. "How so?" "More free," he replied. "You allow yourself to be seen." She looked away, a soft smile playing on her lips. "Perhaps," she said, "or maybe I just feel less invisible." They found a quiet park just past the market. The wind had risen, pulling at her hair and loosening the tie until strands whipped across her face. Zara reached up, trying to gather it back. Without a second thought, Nathan stepped behind her. "Here," he said gently, lifting her hair with both hands. "Allow me." Zara froze for a beat, then let her arms drop to her sides. Nathan worked carefully, smoothing her dark coils back, twisting them into a simple knot, and securing it with the elastic she'd been holding. His fingers brushed the nape of her neck, a light, respectful, yet definite touch. When he finished, she turned to face him. Their eyes met, and for a long moment, the noise of the city seemed to fade away. "I'm sorry if that was too forward," Nathan said quietly. Zara shook her head. It wasn't. Another silence fell, not uncomfortable but full of meaning. "I find myself thinking about you," he confessed, his voice barely a whisper, "more than I ever anticipated." She held his gaze. "I think about you, too." But even as the words hung in the air between them, there was a hesitation, an unspoken barrier that neither of them had yet confronted. Zara finally looked up toward the trees. "But I can't afford to lose myself in this," she said. "Not now. Not ever again." Nathan nodded slowly. "I understand," and he truly did. They walked back together as the light faded, saying little more, but feeling everything. The next crisis arrived, not from the media, but from an internal email that went viral before lunchtime. The subject was innocuous enough. Due diligence follow-up, but the attachment was a poison pen. Someone had assembled a short dossier on Zara Thomas, detailing her past academic achievements, her sudden departure from Stanford, and her family's political troubles in Nigeria. It named no one directly, but the insinuation was sharp and clear. Zara had dangerous secrets. The leak was from inside the company. By noon, whispers were slithering through the halls of Coal Industries. Executives who had started to treat Zara with respect now hesitated when she walked by. Assistants glanced up from their desks. Conversations would stop abruptly. The atmosphere had soured. Zara, after reading the email forwarded by a concerned colleague, felt that familiar weight descend upon her. The feeling of being exposed, of her meticulously constructed privacy being torn apart and twisted. She went straight to Nathan's office, walking past his assistant and shutting the door behind her. He was already on his feet. "I've seen it," he said immediately. "I have to know what you plan to do," she replied, her voice firm, her eyes sharper than he'd ever seen them. "This cannot become a public story." Nathan nodded. "It won't. I've already engaged with legal. We will find the source of the leak and handle it internally and discreetly." "That isn't enough," she said, her voice rising slightly. "If my family is targeted because of this, if anyone publicly connects the dots, I lose everything. They lose everything." He paused, taking in her words with his full attention. "Then I will ensure they are protected," he stated. Within hours, Nathan had retained a global law firm specializing in political asylum and privacy protection. He hired a private team to shield Zara's family in Lagos from any form of digital or physical surveillance. It was not a public display. He didn't advertise his actions. He just made them happen. In the meantime, Zara continued to work. She attended meetings, corrected contract drafts, and analyzed risk reports. But a shift had occurred. Her presence was more guarded, less open. Her confidence remained, but her trust had withdrawn. The all-staff town hall at the end of the week was not scheduled to address the leak, but Nathan took the stage with a clear purpose. He stood before the company's senior leadership and hundreds of employees watching in person and online. He never mentioned Zara's name. He never mentioned Nigeria. But his message was unambiguous. "We have built a company that prides itself on intelligence and innovation," he began. "But none of that means anything if we lose our integrity. If we let gossip define our perception of one another, then we don't deserve the talent we are fortunate enough to have here." He paused. "There are people in this company who have faced challenges most of us will never comprehend. Their past is not a weakness. It is a testament to their strength. If anyone here believes differently, they should seriously reconsider if Coal Industries is the right place for them." No names were spoken, but every person in the room understood. Later that afternoon, as the office began to empty, Nathan walked to Zara's door and knocked. She looked up, her eyes weary but clear. "Your family is safe," he told her. "The firm has confirmed it." Zara's expression didn't change at first, but the tight grip of her hands on her desk finally relaxed. "Thank you," she said. Nathan started to leave, then stopped. "I wish I could do more." "You did enough," she replied. After a moment, she added, "And you did it without making a show of it." That meant more to her than he could ever know. The storm hadn't entirely passed, but Zara Thomas was still standing where she always stood, unbent. And this time, she was not standing alone. The office was peaceful, bathed in the late afternoon light that warmed the soft-hued walls and polished bookshelves. A small orchid was blooming on the corner of Zara Thomas's desk, a quiet echo of the one Nathan had sent months earlier, on her first official day as Director of International Relations. She hadn't requested the title. She hadn't needed one. But over the past year, through meticulous work and a series of difficult, defining moments, she had become an essential part of the company. Today, she had just finalized a complex agreement with a firm in Southeast Asia, a deal that involved navigating 3 languages, 2 different legal frameworks, and weeks of delicate negotiations. It was her team that secured it, her leadership that guided it, her name on the final report. A soft, familiar knock sounded at her door. Nathan entered. He no longer knocked with the urgency of a CEO assuming priority, but with a quiet respect. "Could I borrow 5 minutes?" he asked. Zara nodded, putting her tablet down. "Only 5. He smiled and came forward, carrying a box. It was made of dark, smooth wood with a small brass latch. "I had this made for you," he said, setting it gently on her desk. "It's for you to open whenever you feel ready." Zara slowly lifted the lid. Inside, resting on a bed of black velvet, was an elegant nameplate of brushed gold. It read, "Dr. Zara Thomas, Director of International Relations." Just beneath it, etched into the wooden lining of the box, were the words, "For the one who saw what was behind the words." Zara gazed at it for a long moment, her fingers tracing the engraved letters as if they might disappear. Then she smiled. It wasn't the polite smile from meetings or the cautious one she gave for congratulations, but a true, soft, knowing smile. "Thank you," she said. Nathan nodded once and stepped back. "You don't have to display it. I just wanted you to have it. To know that, in my mind, you've held that title all along." Zara closed the box gently and stood up. She walked to the window, looking out over the sprawling city. San Francisco shimmered in the late light, vibrant and immense. A place that had once threatened to swallow her whole now seemed to reflect her own strength back at her. She remembered that first night, the cold weight of the contract, the condescending laughter in the boardroom, the taste of humiliation mixed with defiance. She had walked into this building invisible. She would never be invisible again. Nathan now stood beside her. He didn't speak or try to define the moment. He simply stood there, close enough for her to feel his presence, but far enough to give her space. Zara turned to him. "I remember everything," she said. "So do I," he replied. She reached out and took his hand, not as a gesture of surrender, but as an act of choice. Her choice. Outside, the wind brushed gently against the glass. Inside, her dark hair caught the light as she glanced back toward her desk, toward the closed box, the nameplate, the proof of all she had become. She had her name back. She had herself back. And now, she had someone who saw her completely, without ever needing to be told who she was. If this story touched your heart, reminded you of the quiet power that resides within us all, or renewed your belief in the grace of being truly seen, then this is only the beginning. At Ball Bouncers Tales, we share tales that inspire, heal, and celebrate the unsung heroes who walk among us every day. People like Zara Thomas, who rise not with a clamor, but with quiet dignity. If you felt something stir within you today, don't let the feeling fade. Subscribe to the Ball Bouncers Tales channel and become part of a community that still believes in courage, empathy, and the profound beauty of human connection. Your next story is ready, and it might just change your life.